everyone. I'm your host, Henna Zubairi, and welcome back to another episode of Justice for All Now. Thank you for joining us on Muslim Network TV, America's only Muslim-focused TV network. You can watch us 24/7 on Galaxy 19 satellite, Roku TV, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and various social media channels. It's Inauguration Day, and there's lots to discuss, but today we will be focusing on the Muslim ban. Justice for All has been, over the past several years, been a part of several lawsuits against Trump's travel ban among the state of Hawaii in the 4th District. As we all know, this ban restricted issuance of visas to individuals from many Muslim and African countries, namely Somalia, Syria, Yemen, Nigeria, and then Iran, Sudan, Tanzania, and then we saw even Burma pop up, Myanmar pop up, which is something very surprising when many people don't know that the largest numbers of refugees that come to the United States are from Myanmar. Many of them are persecuted Christians, and obviously the few Rohingya that managed to come in are from there as well. And that's been a focus of ours. Under this ban, millions of people fleeing violence, hoping to reunite with their families, access medical treatment, pursue their careers, and other just innocuous, just visiting, had been banned from entering the United States. So today we look forward to this ban being finally repealed. And with me are two guests from organizations, Muslim civil rights organizations, who have been working for the past 4 years, since the day we all landed at our airports with our signs. How many of you remember that day? How many of you were at airports with allies and supporters, elected officials, protesting this ban? And so with us today to discuss this is Ahmed Mitchell from CAIR National and Madiha Hussein, who from Muslim Advocates. Thank you both so much for being here. Brother Ahmed Mitchell is an attorney and former journalist who serves as the Deputy Director of the Council of American-Islamic Relations, the largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization in the US. And previously, he was in Georgia from 2016 to 2020. He's also worked as a criminal prosecutor in the city of Atlanta. And Sister Madiha serves as special counsel for anti-Muslim bigotry at Muslim Advocates and heads the program to counter anti-Muslim hate. She has worked with coalitions of organizations to combat anti-Muslim efforts by public officials. Thank you so much to both of you for being here, and I look forward to this discussion.
Thanks for having us. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. So for our audience, some of those who may not know, as our channel beams into about 57 million homes, many in rural America, and in Canada, in Mexico. So for those who may not know, I gave a brief introduction to the Muslim ban. If both of you could sort of walk us through, perhaps take one version at a time, because there were several versions of this ban. Perhaps Madiha, if you could start with Muslim ban 1, and then Edward, if you could walk us through Muslim ban 2 to the most recent version.
Yeah, happy to start. Thanks again for having me join today. This is a really momentous day for our community and for, as you said, for all those people that joined us at the airports and really spoke out against this. So as you said, there were multiple versions of the Muslim ban that were introduced by the administration. And what the key is, without getting too far into the weeds, the key is that the first version of the Muslim ban was introduced by Donald Trump within a week of his taking office. So I believe it was the Friday after the inauguration, and he signed into law a ban that fulfilled his promise from the campaign cycle, which was to institute a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering this country. And by design, it included Muslim majority countries, and the purpose of it was to restrict entry and visa and granting of visas for people to come into this country. Now, what's tricky about it is that because it was the first version, there was a lot of question about how is this supposed to take effect. And that's why we saw what we did at the airports. There was a lot of confusion. People were actually stuck on planes or en route to the country from their home country or from travel. And they were not allowed to enter once they arrived in the United States. And so because of that, there was a lot of confusion. And I think what's really important about the reason for mentioning that is there was a lot of challenge. So as soon as the first executive order was signed, multiple organizations, you mentioned the state of Hawaii versus Trump, there were a number of different lawsuits that were filed immediately because of this vague and unclear law that was put into place. Muslim advocates also challenged the first version of the Muslim ban, and it was essentially the courts continued to say that this is not a valid way of executing executive authority to restrict entry into this country for any reason whatsoever. And so that led to, which my colleague will talk about from CAIR, that there were multiple newer versions that were introduced because of that.
So Edward, what happened with the second version and the current version?
Yeah. So as Medea mentioned, I mean, we had different organizations had great success in the initial lawsuits that we filed against the president's initial travel order. It was almost within hours or days blocked from enforcement on grounds, number one, that it was designed to target a religious group, and number two, that it violated immigration law. Eventually, it got to the Supreme Court, the earlier versions, and the Supreme Court ruled that it could come partially into effect. And the president was able to ban people from coming to this country temporarily while the Supreme Court considered the case. And eventually the Supreme Court ruled that the Muslim ban was, in fact, legal. They decided to turn away both the constitutional argument that the ban was motivated by anti-religious, anti-Muslim animus, and they also turned away the legal argument that it violated immigration law. So by the time we got to the third version of the order, the one that was upheld by the Supreme Court, that version was very similar to the second. It was very different from the first. The first version would have banned even permanent residents of the United States from coming back home if they were residents of one of the banned countries. That would have impacted people who have been here and are here legally, but just have not completed their citizenship process yet. So that version of the ban was defeated. But the final version that was enforced did essentially allow the president to bar anyone from coming here on a worker visa, a student visa, come here to get married. Essentially, if you were one of the citizen of the banned country and you weren't already here, you were not going to be able to get here unless you received a government waiver. And the waivers were very, very rarely handed out. In Georgia, we dealt with the case of a Muslim man, 76-year-old Syrian, who had family here in the United States. He was diagnosed with eye cancer. He applied for a medical visa to come here. The government even turned him down simply because he was Syrian. And we fought about that, and the government reversed course and let him in. He got the surgery, alhamdulillah. But that just goes to show you how extreme the final version was, that even people who had a very legitimate medical reason to come here and clearly posed no threat whatsoever were not allowed to come. And so the third version of the ban, even though it was not as bad as the first version, it still had a horrific impact on so many people, students, workers, families here and abroad.
When I look at this ban and the after effects of this on the families and American Muslims and people overseas, And we think, okay, hopefully this is a big going. We're all waiting for this announcement for the Biden administration has promised the Muslim community and allies across, and thank you to all the allies who've stood with the Muslim community on this, that this ban will be repealed. But once the ban is repealed, what are the after effects that are still left behind that still need to be worked out or unraveled?
If I could just jump in and also mention, in addition to the ban that was upheld by the Supreme Court, which was the sort of third version, President Trump also expanded that to include multiple other countries last year. And so that actually opened up a whole other range of countries. That's why it was sort of expanded to include African countries, so the Muslim and African ban. And that is significant for a number of reasons, but I think in particular because it demonstrates again that this ban was never rooted in protecting our country or for national security reasons, but rather that it was about discriminating against people because of where they come from. And I think that is what the message was, that's the message that was sent by the administration by the original versions of the ban that were, sort of repackaged to meet the requirements of the Supreme Court, but then also when it was expanded as well. And to your question, I think about the sort of after this is all said and done, today we have commitment from President Biden that he is going to rescind the ban in all forms. So anything that is current law is no longer going to be the law when it comes to the ban. But that's just the first step. We have to actually see these families reunited. We have to actually see that these individuals who've lost out on job opportunities and have lost out on critical medical treatment or have not pursued educational opportunities actually get the chance to do those things. And that doesn't happen overnight, unfortunately. This is a huge, big step. And it's a really, not only, I think, a significant step because of what it actually will lead to, but it also sends a really strong message to the American public, something that we already knew, which is that in America, we believe that people should be welcome regardless of where they come from. How they look, how they pray shouldn't matter. And that, I think, is what we as an organization at Muslim Advocates, and I know, my colleagues at CAIR and so many other advocacy organizations are going to hold the administration accountable for, which is now that you are rescinding this ban, please make sure that you're also removing all of the hurdles that are in the way for the process to unfold. Remove the bureaucratic red tape, the bureaucracy and the red tape that usually is involved in these immigration processes. And let's make it so that these individuals can reunite and be where they need to be as quickly as humanly possible.
Edward?
Yeah, I'd say absolutely. And I think beyond that, we have to remember that the Muslim ban was just really perhaps the worst and most visible act of anti-Muslim bigotry perpetrated by an administration. But there are systemic problems in our immigration system that impact both American Muslims and Muslims from overseas. And we are really hoping that the Biden administration will listen to Muslim organizations that are demanding systemic change. For example, the terrorism watch list includes thousands upon thousands of Muslim Americans and others who have not been charged with committing a crime, have not committed any crime, and yet they're on this watch list that impacts their ability to work, to live, to get a job, to travel. Same for the no-fly list. That has been defended by not only the Trump administration, but the Obama administration, the Bush administration before them. So when we're thinking about anti-Muslim policies, the Muslim ban was, yes, very explicit, very visible, very noticeable, in part because of who signs it into law. But there are other systemic problems in our governmental immigration system that need to be addressed. The Muslim ban was the cherry, but it was not the whole sundae. So there are other things that we need President Biden to really address. And based on the people he's appointed, we think that's going to be a reach, and it's going to be a bit of a struggle. But we at least believe that with this administration, we've got leaders who are willing to listen. And that is a big change from what we've been dealing with over the past 4 years.
Exactly. And there's always been sort of a soft ban on some of these countries already. There's, years of, I know for Yemen, I remember talking to an previous INS official, and she told me that Yemen, people from Yemen it takes years for them to get their visas processed. I can tell you personally, my brother has a daughter who's an American citizen, but for the past 10, 15 years, he has not been able to travel to the United States. So this sort of soft ban has been in place for a while, and I hope that as in the coming years, as you said, the red tape and the bureaucracy around this will end. What is the legacy? Like we often associate this with Trump's Muslim ban, but Stephen Miller had a big role to play in some of this as well. And what is the legacy he's leaving behind that we specifically need to watch out for, or has to be addressed quickly by the Biden administration?
Medea, if you want to go first, please.
Thank you. I'm happy to jump in. I think both of us probably have a lot to say about this, but really this past administration has brought to light, I think, something that many of us have known for a long time, which is that one of the real threats that remain in this country and that are probably the most serious threats to everyone's safety is white supremacy and white nationalism. And while advocates like us have been working on this issue long before the Trump administration was actually official, we heard about it on the campaign cycle, and we knew it existed before that. I think the difference has been that we've seen the consequences of that, especially if we look at what happened just a couple of weeks ago, or time is all blurring together, but just what happened on Capitol Hill. What we see, what we saw that happened then is really a result of this normalizing of behavior and rhetoric that leads to violence, that leads to the targeting of our communities, and has been impacting our communities for years. And that's what we have to tackle head on. And that is what President Biden needs to prioritize immediately, which is, I think a lot of folks have been talking about healing as a country and uniting, and all of those things are really important, but we need to name the threat as it is, and we need to tackle it head on. And so I know at Muslim Advocates, we will be prioritizing making sure that the administration is dedicating resources not to repackaging laws that target our communities. So not focusing on, domestic terrorism laws as they stand, but rather focusing on the real threat and how to address that as a root issue, and not, and not sort of sideswiping that issue. But it's a priority for us, and we hope that it will be for the administration.
Yeah, same here. And I would add that, Stephen Miller and others in the Trump administration, they were largely successful in doing what they sought to do, which was to make our immigration system even worse for people attempting to come to this country, especially at the border. And so I think one of the things that has to be looked at is the damage that's been done to the civil service in the federal government, which has been gutted in many agencies, especially the State Department, and also looking at what sort of civil servants are left behind in CBP, in ICE. Are these people who are going to, no matter who the president is, carry out abusive behavior against people attempting to come to this country? And so I think that the Biden administration needs to take a hard look at who has been left behind in the bureaucracy, what damage has been done to the bureaucracy, and make sure that whatever policies they are implementing at the national level are actually implemented effectively by the people on the ground. And I think they also need to hold those people accountable for abuses they committed during the Trump administration. You have prison guards and immigration officers who undoubtedly did horrible things, and they need to be held legally accountable if they violated any laws or policies. And then I think also I would second Medea that in terms of confronting the threat of white supremacism and domestic terrorism, that absolutely needs to be taken seriously. For years, our government has overhyped the threat of so-called Muslim extremism. But the fact is that the vast majority of violent attacks in this country have always been committed by far-right white male extremists. And so we don't want to see the government passing new laws that'll be used to harm all people and quickly be used against innocent members of the Muslim community, but rather we would just like to see the government use the existing laws they have, take them seriously, and make sure to address the threat that far-right extremists pose to mosques, to synagogues, to the very government itself without engaging in national security overreach as they did over the past 20 years when dealing with the Muslim community.
Now, both of you have been in leadership positions while in these past 3 years and 4 years of pushing against this policy. What have you learned? What were the struggles, and what would you do differently?
I'll let you go first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, not to get meta on you, but, as a Muslim, I believe Donald Trump was a trial and a test, maybe even a punishment for some people for our country. And so whether it's the Muslim ban or any of the other things that he did, I view it as an opportunity for us to respond to something bad with something good, to be patient, have sabr, and to make sure that in our response that we are responding not with evil, not by sacrificing our values or our faith, but harnessing our faith and making sure that we are standing up not only for ourselves, but for other communities who were targeted as well. Muslims were just maybe the first community he targeted after taking office, but we weren't the only ones. And so I think one of the things that the Muslim community in general really learned was the importance of standing up for other people who are unjustly targeted. Not standing up with anyone and everyone in the name of solidarity, no, but standing up for people who face injustice. And so whether that was DACA recipients, people at the border, African Americans targeted by police brutality, women threatened with sexual harassment, all those things, the Muslim community, really rallied and spoke up. And you saw us at every protest in defense of people facing injustice. And so I think the thing that I've learned and taken to heart is the importance of making sure that, yes, you protect yourself, but also you harness your faith, which teaches us to fight for justice for all people, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim. Justice is justice. So I think the community learned that lesson, and I think that's something, inshallah, that I'll be taking with me.
Matiha.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. In the work that I've done during my time at Muslim Advocates, it's always been rooted in coalition work and recognizing that a threat to our community is also a threat to other marginalized or minority communities. So speaking to that example, Donald Trump signed the Muslim ban within his first week in office, but there was a spike in hate crimes against immigrants. There was a spike in hate crimes against Muslims just as much as as that was true for other communities as well. And I think that has been what drove our work on the Muslim ban as well. It was not just about getting the Muslims to demonstrate how this is so harmful to our community and how it has impacted our community members, but also that if they could do this as an administration to one community, who's to say that they wouldn't do it to another in the future? And so as a result of that, we were able to build a strong coalition of organizations, Muslim and non-Muslim, faith groups that were representing all communities that were able to come forward and talk about why this is so harmful to us as a country and why this is something that we shouldn't stand for together. And so I think that my hope is as we continue to move forward and progress, inshallah, from this time as a country, is that we can also continue to stand as my colleague mentioned, stand against injustices. We need to continue to do that. This shouldn't be something that we leave with the Trump administration. We should continue to do that. And hopefully that will mean that we can continue to build our coalitions so that we will hold this administration accountable for any new policies that come forth, or for, ensuring that the Muslim ban is fully repealed and people can be together again.
That leads me to the next question and this is something that, what would stop a future president for coming and implementing it again, or having some sort of a similar sort of religious kind of filter, or putting specific Muslim countries or African countries on a list like this again? How can that legally be stopped?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there is a piece of legislation known as the No Ban Act, and that was introduced and passed in the House last year. And it was a historic bill because it's the first ever civil rights bill that is strictly focused on the rights of Muslims. And, because it was passed in the House, the next step would have been to take it to the Senate. And now we have a new composition of Congress, and we need to ensure that Congress passes that law, because the purpose of the No Ban Act is to do exactly that, is to prevent any future president from enacting discriminatory immigration bans like this. And we know from what we've seen today, what was announced, and what the president has committed to, is that he plans to include the No Ban Act in his in a comprehensive sort of immigration bill that will be passed on to Congress for consideration. And so the No Ban Act will be included in that. There's a lot of work to be done to make sure that that is what Congress ultimately passes, but that leaves us remaining sort of hopeful that we can actually see this come to fruition very soon.
Sure.
Yeah, that's it. That's the answer.
That's the answer. And this is something that we need to highlight that, because a lot of folks think that, okay, this is repealed, that's it, we're done. And we're not done. There's still a lot of work to be done, like you said, in Senate, and with the new composition of the Senate. I hope allies, other Muslim organizations adopt this in their agenda for 2021, is getting the No Ban Act passed through Senate, and holding our elected officials accountable, especially in. So, who are the leaders or champions of this act in Senate right now?
So I would say, and I know we're out of time, so I'll answer very briefly before, as I know both of us have to depart, is that on the Senate side, I'm not sure who the sponsors of the legislation are, but I know, being from Georgia, that I think we're going to have strong supporters of it. And Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff, who have been very good friends of the Muslim community. And I think that you'll also see other Democratic senators hopefully pushing this. And obviously there are some senators who are Democrats, but also very much supporters of the national security state and expansive presidential power. And so we may have to butt heads with them. But I am hopeful. There's a narrow majority, and I think there might just be a few libertarian-leaning Republicans to get this thing across the finish line. So I know Muslim advocates and CAIR, and a lot of us will be fighting to do that, because, again, you never know. It could be Trump 2024 for all we know. I don't know. So you want to make sure the law is changed so that this cannot happen again.
And in brief, Senator Coons was the co-sponsor for the bill in the Senate, and he has been an incredible champion for this. It was a priority for him from the get-go, and it was something that he was working on with advocates even before the Supreme Court decision, because it was anticipated that it may not go in our favor. And so Senator Coons continues to be a champion for this, and we know that there are other senators who are also going to make this a priority. But we had to get to this point, and so now that we're here, I agree. I hope it will continue to be a priority for our organizations to ensure that this is signed into law, so that we don't have to deal with this as a country again.
Well, I know both of you have to go, so thank you so much for your time, for being here. And hopefully we'll have you back on in the near future, so we can discuss the next steps further. Thank you so much, Edward and Madiha. And to my audience here, as you can see, we're waiting for the announcement, and it is something that many Muslims throughout the world are listening and watching for. This is a commitment that the Biden administration has made to those of us who have been engaging with his campaign from the very beginning. And as we reflect on this, that I'm just thinking about all the families that will be hopefully reunited. I remember covering a story of two newlyweds who were stuck in an airport in Jeddah, and the bride could not travel to her home country of Sudan. They were stuck at the airport, Jeddah airport, for several days, and the groom was not able to bring his new bride back home to Virginia as he thought he would be. And I'm thinking of the two of them and praying for their families, and many hundreds and thousands of families like that who have been so terribly affected these past 4 years. Our prayers are with you. We hope to see you here flourishing in, this is our country. and we hope to bring it back to that country that was welcoming of refugees, welcoming of immigrants, welcoming of tourists, and that this really toxic rhetoric that had been coming from 1400 Pennsylvania Avenue will change, and at least in that aspect, the United States will go back to being that beacon of a welcoming nation. So I hope to see that. And if you have any questions about this, if you would like to work on, keep an eye on the No Ban Act and make sure you get in touch with your senators to ask them for their support in passing this very important piece of legislation. So thank you to all of you for joining us. Assalamu alaikum.